But
I got to read my thing, don't I? Good evening. Welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting for Monday, February 7th, 2022. We'll call the meeting to order tonight at the Chaska Event Center at 3210 Chaska Boulevard. And we are also available via Zoom. So, let's read this here real quick to make us legal here. Welcome everyone. You might notice that things look a little different due to COVID-19 pandemic. We are holding our meeting at the Chaska Event Center. Because the City Council has declared a local emergency for COVID pandemic, state statute allows us to hold our meetings with Zoom capabilities. And we certainly want to make sure that everyone can participate. If you have joined the meeting via Zoom, you will notice that you are muted. We have a moderator on a call who will unmute those who wish to speak during the public comment portions of the meeting. Public comments will be reserved for the visitor presentation, public hearings, or special circumstances determined by the council. Once we have reached those parts of the agenda, I will ask if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by computer or tablet, please click on participants on the bottom of your screen and then select raise your hand icon. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, the moderator will announce your name or phone number and unmute your line. Please remember that public comment is provided at the discretion of the council and is meant to provide productive discourse on topics related to the city of Chaska. Speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that is deemed disorderly, derogatory, obscene, or indecent or off topic. Any person engaging in such speech or action may be muted or removed from the meeting. All council actions will be taken by a roll call vote. Thank you. All right, with that, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Welcome. Next up, Matt, are you doing all the roll calls?
I am. Boy, I didn't write down everybody's name. I might call you some different name tonight.
It figures. With that, Bill, will you call roll? I mean, Nate. Matt.
Bill? Okay, now I'm definitely going to call you something different. All right.
I was wondering when you were going to catch it.
All right. Councilor Hatfield.
Not very smart.
Councilor Hubbard.
Here.
Councilor Wong. Here. Councilor McGraw. Here. Mayor Winchell. All right.
All right. Next, we're moving on to item 4, adopting the agenda. Corrections or additions to the agenda? If none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Second.
Second by Councilmember McGraw. Discussion. Hearing none. Matt.
Oh, that's right. I have to call everyone. All right. Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilor Wong. Councilor McGraw.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Moves us to visitor presentation. Is there anyone here for visitor presentation other than agenda item? Kevin, anybody outside?
No.
Okay. So we're going to go past visitor presentation. Now we need to approve previous meeting minutes, and I think we can do this in one swoop. We're doing January 3rd and January 24th and our special council meeting.
I'd actually do them as two separate ones.
Separately?
Yep.
Never mind. We'll start with January 3rd, 2022 council meeting.
Question before, so I sent some changes to Denise this afternoon. Were those would be included in?
We'll put those, if you send some over, we'll put them in after the fact.
Just wanted to make sure.
We got a council update late, like
Yeah,
at
did you
4.
see?
About 4
We caught
o'clock.
some, I caught some, you caught some.
Stuff early in the morning, so maybe she added it.
And then I
I
saw,
haven't on it yet.
and I responded back to her because I caught something after you guys did, and then I responded back to her after that.
It was published again after,
Okay.
like, it was published again.
I got 4 o'clock or something.
Yeah.
Did I see it
Yeah.
Pop up, so it's probably all good.
That's good.
Oh, since we're on the topic of questions, should I abstain from the special one since I was absent?
Yes, you would have,
You don't have to abstain from voting for it to adopt it's up to you, but it's just adopting the minutes. It's not taking a decision-making in that meeting.
Okay, all right.
okay. All right, so is there a motion to approve January 3rd meeting minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Grau,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield. Discussion. Hearing none. Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong? Councilmember Grau?
Yes.
Mayor Winchell?
All right, now we're going to be approving the January 24th city council meeting and the special meeting prior to that council meeting. Again, discussion. Anyone willing to make a motion to approve?
I'll move to make a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard,
Second.
second by Councilmember Wong to approve the 24th and the special council meeting. Discussion. Hearing none. Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember Grau?
Yes.
Mayor Winchell?
All right, moves us to consent. Again, these are items that need our approval, but not necessarily need a conversation, but any and all can be removed at any point for discussion. Is there discussion on anything? I just have real quick one. What exactly is 7A? What are we doing there?
So that one is an application that we put in to potentially allow us, if circumstances work, to consider putting Cooper's grocery store into a land trust model. So we're talking through the concept of potentially seeing if that's an option. And to keep those options open, the Carver County CDA has a grant application process, so we can get up to $100,000 a year. And this would allow us to get those dollars, and we have lots of stuff to talk through it, but we just started the discussions and this grant application was due last week.
So this is just keeping us game ready.
Keeping the discussions viable to be able to have dollars. It's not committing us to any project, but putting our application in to basically make those dollars available if we can put some kind of a partnership together. And I can certainly, if you want me to, I can talk a little bit about it, or I could put it in a bi-weekly the next time too.
I'm fine with that. I just read it and I just wasn't really understanding exactly. And it was on consent, so I'm just trying to figure out how I was missing something.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to find a way to keep a downtown grocery store viable for long term. And this is potentially a model that we could use that we haven't used before, and we're exploring it. And this would give us some of the dollars needed to do it if we thought that was a good idea.
Is everyone else good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, anyone else have a comment on something? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Hubbard.
Second by,
I'll
Councilmember
second it.
Hubbard. Second by Councilmember Hatfield. Discussion. Hearing none. Nate?
Question I'll raise with you quick is, are you guys okay with just having everybody show up I'm looking at this commission appointment one, and there was different motions that were put on each of them. Are you guys okay with just wrapping
That's right. Shouldn't that have been
I'm sort of wondering if we should pull it up.
that should be, that's right. I was thinking, yeah, I looked at that.
Listen, that now that there's the different ones.
Oh.
Yes, we have to do that individually.
I would suggest we pull that off and then just do the vote on everything except for
Item 7D, and then item 7D will then go to item 8B.
In
Our-
E,
What's that?
7E is also commission, except it's the chair and vice chair. Can that one stay on, or does it need to come off?
I mean, typically that has been a consent item. It's only been the actual appointments that we've had that have not been consent.
I was gonna say, we've always generally gone through the appointments.
Yeah.
But I think with that work session kind of threw us off, because normally we're here scrambling and putting it together.
I should have pulled that off before, but I'm noticing it now, and I think it'd be better if it was a second discussion.
My motion and second, good with that, that we remove 7D to make it 8B.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So with that, now our motion is approving consent minus 7D. We have a motion by Hubbard, second by Hatfield. Further discussion? Hearing none. Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong? Councilmember McGraw?
Yes.
Winchell?
All right, moves us to 8A, recommendation to council to enter into a service agreement for facility naming rights and sponsorship.
Mayor and Councilmember, you will remember several months ago, we had a work session that talked about the potential opportunities for looking at naming rights for different recreational facilities we have around the community. As we talked about at that point, that really there's a number of steps to be able to go through to be able to determine if that's a viable option, if there's companies that are even interested in it, if, you know, coming up with terms and conditions of anything like having any type of naming rights is something that we want to pursue, but that the real first step was being able to go out and find a consultant that works with these companies to work with to, you know, to be able to enter into agreement and work to really do an assessment of our facilities and see what potential opportunities are there. So that's where we're at in this process. We did do an RFP to be able to consider proposals made by companies towards this project. And I have our Park and Rec Director, Marshall, here to go over the results of that. And I know he has some guests too, both virtually and here as part of that process. And so you will see at the end that we are recommending moving forward with a group to start this process. But I'll turn it over to Marshall and he can go through some of the details.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. And thanks, Matt, for teeing this up for us tonight. Yeah, as Matt mentioned, we've got some people I'll introduce here before I get into more information. So with us tonight, we've got Mary Monteith, who is in our Parks and Recreation Department, along with Dave Downs, who is the chair of the Chaska Parks and Recreation Committee, officially reappointed as of a couple minutes ago on the consent, because they were part of the process that led to our recommendation of the superlative group. Commissioner Zach Saresig was also part of that process, but he was unable to be here tonight. But they're here and available if you have questions throughout the evening. And then also with us on Zoom over in Cleveland, Ohio, with the superlative group, we have Kyle Cantor, who is the Chief Operating Officer and would serve as our project manager for this, along with Aaron Caputo, who is the attorney with the superlative group. So they are online and available for questions as we go through tonight as well. So what I thought I would do is I would just kind of review the process that we took to get us to the recommendation tonight. And then from there, really just kind of go over some of the key elements of the professional services agreement. So you have a good understanding of what this project would look like going forward. And then just feel free if you have questions throughout or afterwards, we can go through those. So as Matt mentioned, it was back in actually May of last year, 2021, where we held work sessions with both the Parks and Recreation Commission and the City Council to introduce this idea of pursuing naming rights and sponsorship as potential revenue source for some of our parks and recreation facilities. Those work sessions led to a lot of great discussion. If you recall, we actually ran out of time during both of those. So I had followed up and gleaned some more information, but our main goal was really to just assess whether or not this was something you wanted us as staff to pursue further. And it was definitely apparent that was of interest, and also apparent that we should be definitely looking to partner with a consultant for this type of work on behalf of the city. So with that understanding, I put together an RFP. That RFP went out on July 12th. We sent it out directly to 6 different consulting firms, and it was also made available on the city's website. Those proposals were due on July 30th, and we ended up receiving 3 proposals. We got proposals from Front Burner Sports and Entertainment, Great Plains Sponsorships, and the Superlative Group. But it was shortly thereafter that Great Plains Sponsorships actually withdrew their proposal. So with that, it was at the August 10th Chaska Parks Commission meeting. I reviewed those proposals with the commission and made the recommendation that we proceed by interviewing both Front Burner Sports and the Superlative Group as kind of a next step in the process. So on September 7th, we then interviewed Chris Potenza, who represented Front Burner Sports and Entertainment, followed by Kyle Cantor, who I introduced is online with us tonight, who represents the Superlative Group. And it was after really evaluating the proposals in the interviews, along with some of the follow-up information we gathered, that Mary, Dave, Zach, and I all came to the conclusion that our recommendation would be the Superlative Group that we move forward with. And some of the key factors that led to that recommendation included that the Superlative Group has been in business for 27 years compared to 5 years for Front Burner Sports. The Superlative Group has a team of 11 staff that include sales executives, valuation analysts, attorneys, and accountants, compared to 1 staff person for the Front Burner Sports. The fees for service were overall pretty similar. However, the expectation for commission to be paid out was actually different. They both proposed 10% commission, of which that commission payout to the Superlative Group would be paid out annually across the terms of the agreements, whereas Front Burner Sports asked for the entire commission to be paid out at the time of the agreements. So that was a pretty significant difference. Superlative Group also negotiates the cost of the signage to be paid for by the business partners, whereas Front Burner Sports would require the city to cover the cost of the signage. Also throughout our conversation, Superlative Group agreed to waive their travel expenses that were initially indicated in their proposal. So the Superlative Group, they are headquartered out of Cleveland, Ohio, and they have satellite facilities in Las Vegas, Nevada, and London. Like I said, they've got 27 years of experience, and they've delivered more than $2.2 billion in naming rights, sponsorship, and premium seating revenue across a variety of sectors, including convention centers, charitable nonprofits, research universities, municipalities, and sports venues. Kyle Cantor, who would be serving as our project lead, has successfully negotiated naming rights and sponsorships here in Minnesota and has developed relationships with several Minnesota-based businesses throughout that process. Those projects include the Healthy Sports Center, which is the City of Woodbury's community center. It was formerly known as the Bielenberg Center. They negotiated the exclusive pouring rights with Pepsi for the Minneapolis Convention Center, and also secured a sponsorship with the Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild for a craft lounge that's located at the Minneapolis Convention Center. They secured CHS Field for the St. Paul Saints baseball stadium. And they're currently retained by the Minnesota Orchestra to sell naming rights and sponsorship for a future 20,000 outdoor seat amphitheater that they're working on. So all those factors really led us to our recommendation that the superlative group would be a great fit for the city of Chaska in this project. So it was on October 12th where we brought that recommendation to the Chaska Parks and Recreation Commission, in which they passed a motion recommending that City Council authorize staff to enter into this service agreement. So before we brought that recommendation to the City Council, we wanted to have our city attorneys at MHS Law to review that professional service agreement and go through that with us. One item that we needed to look into further was determining whether or not the Curling and Event Center would be eligible for naming rights revenue based on the bonds that were used for the financing of it. So we did have the city's bond attorney, Nate Canova, review this, and after reviewing, he did not have any concerns with pursuing this because the Curling and Event Center was financed 100% with taxable bonds. However, one thing that we realized is Fireman's Park, however, was financed with tax-exempt bonds. So that would preclude us from doing any naming rights or sponsorship of the park because of that factor of the tax-exempt bonds that were used. And then, yeah, there were some additional edits just with the professional service agreement, and then both Matt and I actually had a meeting with Kyle and Aaron to review that in the very end to finalize the agreement. So some of the key points in the agreement and kind of the phases that we would go through in this project would be that the phase one would really include what's called a valuation phase. This phase would take about 4 months, and the fee for that phase is $24,000. And that would essentially include a kickoff meeting, and then Superlative's valuation team would be on site and really conduct an analysis of the facilities that we want them to take a look at and evaluate throughout our system. They then take that information back and utilize their evaluation techniques, and then we would ultimately get a report back that would really explain kind of what the opportunities are in front of us with each facility that they evaluate. It's at that point where City Council would ultimately determine whether or not you want to proceed on to the next phase. And if we do, the next phase would really be phases 2 and 3, which would be where the superlative group would meet with potential partners and negotiate agreements along with the activation of those agreements. Once again, though, City Council would always approve any agreement. So while they're out there negotiating on the city's behalf, all those agreements would have to get approved before they get executed. That phase 2 and phase 3 typically takes about 6 to 18 months. Throughout those phases, they would essentially be on a retainer where they would receive $3,000 a month. And then for every agreement that gets approved and executed, they would receive a 10% commission on. And that commission would get paid out over the term of those agreements. So if it's a 15-year term, they'd get 10% annually each year over those 15 years as we're receiving payment from the sponsorship income. So, so really, I think what we would need to decide on is, them coming in and conducting that first valuation phase, and what facilities we would want them to take a look at. And in our thought, out of that would, and I think we had talked about this in the work session, would be to really kind of focus on the curling and event center. We feel that would be kind of the logical start in this process, and then see what other opportunities exist from there.
One thing I should point out is that, I've talked with the city of Woodbury's city manager about this, and they worked with a superlative group and had a very good experience. We just found out a couple days ago that the city of Shakopee is going through the exact same process now, but they're still in the phase of, they still need to get an RFP to actually look at who they'd actually bring in, but they're looking at doing the same type of project with their community center, and then components within their community center, like their pool, fitness center, ice rinks, but then they also have that outdoor pool facility that's over there, the sand bottom one, that they're having an evaluation done on that too. So again, not making any decisions about are they going to go forward with it, but trying to get the information to understand if there is interest out there and what that interest would look like.
So would only be looking at this facility in the community center.
Well, I think we'd have them do an evaluation on each of the facilities just so we understand the information. But we're going to have them particularly focus on this one because because it seemed most, like we talked about in the work session, it seems like the most logical one that you would start. Because it's if you look at most curling facilities out there, most of them have some type of sponsorship stuff on. So it would not be an unusual thing. It's sort of like hockey arenas. Most hockey arenas have, at the very least, dasher boards that have some type of advertising on them. So it sort of seemed like the low-hanging fruit to start with, but we'd want to have them do an evaluation of the different facilities just so we understand, so that you guys have the information to look at it and say, is it worth even pursuing this any further, or do we just focus on this or focus on a couple of things? It's really to give you guys that information to determine what things are you even interested in, and if you were, what type of value could potentially be associated with those.
So just a clarifying question, that $24,000 fee evaluates everything, not just curling.
So that is all structures, or in terms of like the curling event center, the community center, athletic park. Or is it
also having them look at things like, say, the new community park out in Southwest Chaska? Look at that and say, does it make what would a park look like? Because there's for instance, like the Miracle League field that's planned to be out there, that is sponsor driven. Sort of like the loop. The loop is sponsor driven by people who have made contributions to help renovate that. So there's precedent out there for looking at parks, and different cities have looked at that. We may look and say, nope, that doesn't make sense, but we thought it was good for you guys to at least have the information of understanding what type of value was there.
So like town course would be included in the evaluation, right? Okay.
I was even thinking our trails, we could think of our trails as a facility for them to look at.
How granular would it be? Because I know we had talked about like at one point, like trail loops, right? And, because as part of the trail system, so if we had loops, and this would be like this brand loop and this other brand loop, right? Have some sort of identity associated with this. Would it get that granular, or how they structure that?
I think that's what this information would get at, is to say if there was value on something like a trail section, what would bring that value? So maybe it is that, maybe it's loops, or maybe it's a specific line. So maybe it's, you know, the line between here and Carver, right? You know, whatever the case may be, I think that's what would get at. And again, it's not saying that everything has value, nor does it say that everything we should put value to. This is purely informational at this point. It's really to give you guys information to say, are there things that you look at to say, you know, could we make this facility better? And, you know, if we went this direction, or as we look at it, do we feel real strongly that, yeah, maybe we can look at this, but this makes no sense at all.
So hypothetically, we could get a number back for Athletic Park, for example, right? And say, you know what, even though it's a high value, it may be something that we don't feel right about putting a name on it because it's more of a historic something that really should be pure community, right? And, you know, just hypothetically, right? And that could be something that comes back, or we could say, hey, wow, there's a lot of dollars associated with that, and maybe it's worth it because we can reinvest or something, right? That's the two different sides to it.
Yeah, that's sort of the hope, is to be able to give you, I mean, because right now it's just speculation. You know, we can just guess based on what other cities have seen with their facilities, what naming rights might be worth. But without actually doing the evaluation, it's just speculation. And so the hope is it can give you some real information to be able to work with. And then we can have those discussions about, okay, knowing, you know, the value of these, you know, is this worth pursuing further? Or do we say, no, that's not enough value for us to give up a sponsorship in it? Or no, we think this kind of facility is off limits and we don't think we should do sponsorships at all.
How much detail is given? And I mean, the reason why I ask is, you know, will we see a detail of, if this gets sponsorship, exactly what that looks like as far as what's granted to them outside of naming rights?
Well, if you were to approve an agreement with them, which would be the next phase. So let's say curling centers.
Okay.
Let's say that they're, you know, they go out and do an initial evaluation and say, well, this could be worth X number of dollars to be able to do this. If you felt that this facility was one that you'd say, yeah, if we could get enough valuation off of this, this would be worth at least exploring further. That next phase would be to get into the details of an agreement. To be able to look at and say, who exactly would that sponsor be? What exactly would they provide? What are they responsible for? What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? The agreement would get into very minutia detail. But you wouldn't get to that section until you actually say, yeah, this is something pursuing further. So there's jump off points all along this whole process. Again, this part is just gathering the information to be able to make some conceptual choices. But then there's the next phase that really looks at, okay, if we did decide to go further and they found a specific sponsor, you know, this is what that deal would look like. And is that acceptable, or are there things in that we say we can't live with that? So there's jumping off points along the whole way.
Is it something where we'd have a chance to establish sort of like criteria for prospective sponsors, like, for example, that, you know, the sponsor should generally align to our community's values, for example, right? I mean, you know, so like, you know, we don't have
those are common ones that as they go through, I mean, you know, I had this discussion with the Woodbury city manager about, you know, you don't want to have somebody that's going to come in and you look at that name as being, man, we do not want our name associated with that business. Those become sort of basic things. And typically in those agreements, there's also sort of these standards that are created that if it ever became an issue, that you could remove that sponsorship.
That second phase that you talked about, that was from, what did you say, 12 to 18 months?
Yep.
And then you said
6 to 18 months. Yep.
6 to 18.
6 to 18? You threw a dollar figure there. What was that dollar figure?
$3,000 a month.
So it'd be a $3,000 a month as we went along to where we either did something or we didn't do something.
Yep. I can tell you from a monetary perspective, I sort of look at this and say, at the very least, we're probably going to come out saying that we should do something with dasher boards or things like that. So I don't think we don't recoup our dollars for investigating this. How big we get is really going to be up to us, depending on the information that they come back with. Because we've even had discussions with, like Little League Baseball, having the interest of looking at how could you take and create value off of some of the Little League Baseball fields that then could be put back into the facilities to continue to re-improve them. So I think on a much smaller scale, there's already been some thought about this from groups like the Hockey Association or the Baseball Association. To me, what makes this a better route to go is that we're looking at it more comprehensively and not just at each specific user group. And we're saying what's best for the community as a whole and not just an individual user group. Because that can get a little sticky, because then you're just like, well, if you're, then who do the dollars benefit? Do they benefit the program, or do they benefit the facility that the community's invested into? So to me, looking at it keeps our focus on what's best for the community.
Yeah, and the fact that we really haven't pursued this in our facilities was something we had talked about. Like, it's kind of a good opportunity because it's sort of a clean slate for us to work from, without any maybe competing sponsorships that are already existing in our facilities.
My impression is that that's more of a typical situation that groups will walk into, is that there's already some level of sponsorship, and then it's just like, well, how do you create value above and beyond that without devaluing the sponsorship you already provided, even though it's smaller, but then also realizing that maybe you shortchange yourself in that. Here, we don't have any sponsorship.
Say we don't have anything right now, but would we do this room?
Depends. I mean, my gut tells me that, and certainly Superlative Group can say this better, but my gut tells me that there's probably value in just this facility, naming the facility, and that there might be additional value in looking at saying that this is a, blah, blah Chaska Event Center, or the blah, blah curling center of the Chaska Curling Event Center, that there might be a bigger presence for the entire building, but then components of that facility could also be looked at too. For instance, one of the things that Marshall talked about in here is, one of the things that has become clear to us as we've operated this curling facility over the last 6 years now that we're missing is a bigger curling lounge. To be able to host bonspiels and the corporate events and stuff. It's awkward when we're having to do that all within the restaurant space, because we're competing with restaurant users. And so, you might look at some, saying, well, maybe there's somebody that sponsors your overall building, but maybe somebody has some interest in helping sponsor that actual curling lounge, that you could actually have bonspiel events in there or juniors events or things like that. So there might be bigger things and components.
And then when one of these events, or if we use the naming type thing, do they get exclusive usage to the building too? No.
No, you could, but they'd have to have quite a bit of value. That's part of the agreement, is, that
Those are the details that I was asking.
I don't think that's typical, but maybe
I was more looking for.
Hey, we're willing to do more if you give us, one evening at the curling facility a year. I think those are some of the details we'd have to look at.
Kyle, you've unmuted yourself. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, first of all, nice to meet many of you, and thanks for allowing us to join tonight. No, you're exactly right, Matt. We would, when it comes to specific kind of facility usage, we would, as we go through that valuation, pay very close attention to, what you're currently charging for usage of that facility. And if we feel it's appropriate to package in one night of usage based on facility availability or 2 nights or something, we would, of course, make sure that, what you're currently charging was kind of baked into that value. So that you would be protected against something like that.
I just wasn't sure if that's part of the deal when you do these things. I have no idea.
Yeah, it really depends on the specific agreements. I mean, I was just last weekend down in Mankato at the Mavericks hockey game, and they have the Mayo Clinic now as the sponsor of their hockey facility, and that's a city-owned civic arena downtown. City of Rochester does that with their civic center. So it's not an atypical thing for communities to look at, and how it works in each community is really dependent on what the community feels comfortable with and what they don't feel comfortable with. And I think that really differs from one city to another. It's just sort of what is the personality of that community.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Kyle, and welcome. I was just curious. It's good to be liked. I was going to kick it to you and say, what attracted you? I wasn't part of the interview team, but maybe they asked you this. But what attracted you to bid, or what do you find about Chaska and our services that says, I want to go after that business and be a partner? I'm just kind of curious to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I think we've had a lot of success in and around the area, and we've also had a lot of success around the country and communities that, look, we've had success in big cities as well. But I think when you look at communities, kind of the size and shape and makeup of your community, I think it's a really good opportunity and a highly saleable asset, at least just specifically talking about the naming rights. Sometimes you look at communities that are, whether it's closer to a big city or kind of just on the suburbs or something, and facilities like this one might get a little lost in the shuffle. But I don't feel like that's the case at all with yours. So when we looked at it, we were just, one, we know the market really well, feel like we can leverage our relationships, and don't just know the market, have had a lot of success there. But two, felt like it was a high probability of a successful outcome. And so we try to align ourselves with those kind of opportunities as much as we can.
Thank you. And the second most important question, have you ever curled before?
I can't say that I've actually competitively curled.
Well, no one here.
None of us here are competitively curled.
Kind of a random question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
We survey the community every couple of years, right? I don't know where we're at in that timeline, but if this is going to take, at least 6 to 18 months, is this going to be a potential question? Because you talked about whether or not the community would want this. And I would be very interested to know if this is something that the community would actually want.
Funny you mention that, because one of the opportunities that we have, you'll see us coming back, I think the end of this month or beginning of March.
Month.
It's the end of this month. So the next meeting, you're going to see us come back with a recommendation for the group to move forward with for the community center master plan. And one of the things that they include in their proposal is to actually have a statistically sound survey included as part of that. And because the community center is going to be one of those facilities that we're going to be evaluating, we're going to ask the general question of exactly that, so that we can get a good sense of not only do people generally feel okay with it, but get more specific about are there places that they think are off limits, or are there things that they think are okay or not okay? So that would be part of our analysis that we'd actually get through that community center master plan.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Go ahead.
That was going to be my question as well. Have we done anything with the community yet? So
Yeah.
But the timing on it works perfect, because if we're going to be evaluating this at the same time, and that's part of the reason we're doing this together, is because we think it's important as we look at the community center that we also consider all the different options that are out there. Well, if we're doing that, we should consider all of our facilities when we're doing evaluation. So if we can tie those two together, I think it's going to give you guys a lot of good information to be able to work with, to see how does the community feel? Is the value of what we can get out there worth pursuing, and what potentially could we accomplish with doing this that maybe we couldn't accomplish if we didn't.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the wanting to understand what the community thinks. I do think there will be a general sense of initial, like, I don't like this, but then get used to it. I mean, I just kind of use from my own experience, right? Because, I don't know why this sticks out to me, but it was like the WNBA and the NBA, like, brands on their uniforms, and it was like this panic moment, like, well, what are we doing here? And now nobody even no one even cares. The Minnesota Vikings or training camp jerseys have everything. So there's an initial reaction like, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. There's this big logo here on this, and then I think people kind of overcome it. Again, I think the survey is good. I do think that's a little bit of a common perception, at least I have, when people look at naming. Now, like facilities and hockey arenas, I think, truthfully, most people probably don't stop to think why we haven't done it yet, because it is very common.
We haven't done that.
Right.
So
I think it'll come down to some of the other things where people will be like, and that's the thing, that's where we'll have to come in and say, like, do we support that? That at that granular level, like, I'll use your example of a loop on a bike path. Does that make sense? Now, again, maybe the valuation isn't there and it doesn't make sense, period. But, those are the things where I think it'll hit people a little bit more strange and different.
So how do we distinguish in this survey, and this is more of a how question of, like the types of the way that branding's in a way that the sense that branding sort of implemented, because for example, there's like, you might take a facility and say there's like a really classy way to say at a high level it becomes like a name, and we're going to limit other branding opportunities so that way you're not necessarily extracting maximum value from it, but it's high value, it's classy, it's kind of something that still fits within our community, versus like a facility where every square inch was plastered with a sticker or logo and feel like you just can't look at something without doing like logo shock, right?
Yeah.
It's like going, it's like going a little bit, there's like the ones that kind of feel like, oh my gosh, they're like everything's sponsored, like this cup sponsored, the table sponsored, it's just like you can't, you're overload. How do you distinguish that? Because I mean, some people are going to respond thinking it's going to be that, and other people are going to be thinking that it's going to be the really classy, here's that.
I think that's going to be a discussion with the consultant we're working on the community center with their the group that they're working with to develop sort of the operational analysis and the survey are really good at doing this. And so I think we need to, it's just like when we developed the community survey, you wouldn't believe how much time we spend developing those questions. I mean, because the way you ask a question can influence the answer that you get.
Right.
And so that, in order to get to the information that's important to you, it's really important that we get the question right. And so we spend a lot of time talking about that type of stuff and how do you create that distinction for people, or maybe you ask a couple questions. You might ask a sort of a degrees question. Like when we were looking at last survey, we talked about the library and, would you support a library addition, and how much money would you support adding to your taxes to support that? And so you had different sort of options or ranges that people could go to. So it sort of gave you a sense of, first of all, are they supportive, but to what extent are they supportive? Because that's, it's not just either are you supportive or not, it's what are the details of it. And an example I'll give is, a facility like this. So you might have the blank curling and event center, and that might have a lot more value than the Chaska curling and event center sponsored or presented by blank. So it might be more palatable to us to say that we want to keep the Chaska name front and center and then just presented by a group than to say, their name first. And you can sort of look at that and say, well, there's more value for one than the other. And then you can sort of evaluate it based on that too, as what things become most important to you.
Because Dave, you got to come up here. They can't hear you at home.
Yep, you just want to go
microphone there
so that you're on the mic.
Now, one of the things I was going to mention is the timing of this thing is right. You mentioned the building onto the curling center here, and that's an enticement for a sponsor and it's also a great sales tool to the community. They're getting something out of this, and that's the same with the community center. We're going through this master plan, and the naming rights should be attached to the plan. When we get the plan evolved to what we're going to be doing to that facility, we should be able to get someone to get naming rights for the thing and help pay for it and sponsor it and help the community understand why we're doing this thing. So I think, those two are joined.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. The point that if you just kind of include the question, would you want to rename this facility after a corporate brand? I think you're going to get a lot of answers in one direction, but there's so much more that we try to get out of these partnerships, aside from the funding and what that funding can deliver, and however you guys choose to allocate that funding, but so many other kind of programmatic supporting pieces and other the brand, few brands these days want to just spend money, put their sign up and leave. Like that's not 10 years ago, that was a really interesting way to market yourself, but today that's not so much what they're focused on. So developing other things that would be, benefits and assets to the community. And you guys talked a little bit about the trails. Again, like putting a logo on the trail throughout could be an element of something, but there could be a lot of other programmatic pieces that come along with a partnership with, say, a healthcare system that could be an interesting thing to look at. That'll all be your choice, but I think it's hard to look at what could come without it's hard to judge it before it's all in front of you. And so that'll just be, again, it'll kind of come back to how you ask the questions.
Al, can you expand or elaborate on some of the maybe partnerships that you have brokered in regards to the more than just the logo? Like what exactly are these companies looking for? Just maybe one or two examples.
Yeah, we just did one out in Irvine for a park, actually, with UCI Health. And one of the big things that they wanted in that partnership was some access to, this is a really big park with big parking lots. But one of the things they wanted was access to some of those parking lots to do things like community blood drives, to do things like community education on certain health subjects, whether it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month or to get kids out and have kind of weekend morning activities where they're starting that health education process at a much younger age than is currently taking place. So those are just kind of a few that come to mind, but it's those kind of things that another one that just popped in my head was we had another partner that wanted to kind of around the holidays sponsor a bunch of programming and kind of live music and create, it was kind of in addition to a festival that was already taking place, but they really wanted to kind of lift that up and add some support to specifically to that and improve the community event that was already taking place. So it can come in a lot of ways. I think part of our job here during this first phase is to see what you're currently doing, how you're currently doing it, and give some thought to those other elements of a partnership aside from just the cash.
Thank you.
So kind of the concern I had about this building is you hate to have a nice big fancy wedding here, then you take a photo and there's Ford on the back wall or something. So I just, that's the part that makes me a little conscious about this.
That's one of the things that, I think as we go through and we have the same concern. So, because we have to rent this space, right, too. And so, I think that's part of, when we talk about bringing them through and helping them understand how we use these facilities and how they're used by the public now, what things are off limits, but what things are things that, could be looked at. That's all part of the process.
I can see it in the curling center, that's not an issue, but this would be a little more delicate about how we name this or who gets named to it.
We couldn't have like a divorce attorney putting That's probably a bad example, but it's, but I think what you're getting at is you want to make sure that the space is beautiful, it's usable, and that we're not aligning ourselves with something that doesn't match with the values of what we're trying to accomplish as an organization.
The first step, I think, to even just know what I mean, we all have ideas in our heads of what could be or what's what. I just don't think we have to kind of take this first step. And I think, as it's been mentioned, having a clean slate and making a plan rather than being willy-nilly about it is a really wise decision. So Parks Board and Parks team for all the hard work on it. Because I think, yeah, when you get willy-nilly, you're just trying to go off with different organizations, like it was mentioned, it could be a lot. But this is clean. We get a good idea of where we're going and what's possible. And then all of these other questions we have can kind of fall in line. So I think I'm really excited about it.
I'm also really excited too, because I mean, I like the fact that we're looking at this from a strategic perspective too. So it's not just like we're looking at this as one thing and this is one thing and this is something else. By looking at it in the big picture of things, we can have a plan moving forward of like what as a community do we value that we are willing to put a label on or just sell the naming rights to. And then what are we not? And to be more strategic and deliberate about it. So that way we don't end up in a situation where if we want to do something broader, right, that we're kind of, backed into our own corner because we didn't really realize what we could and couldn't do. And also didn't understand the value of our assets too. Because I believe that, one of the things is important, especially in this day and age where we're often fiscally constrained, by, how much we can, what we can tax for and what makes sense to as a community. This allows us to generate revenue in a more novel way that doesn't impact consumers or impact our taxpayers. And allows us to deliver value into our community in a way that's more transparent to people. That's, that adds value and people can feel like, yeah, we're getting something out of this too. So I think it's good for us to explore those options.
We have a really amazing business community in town, I feel like. So I think it's just a unique opportunity. We think about big brands, but that's, I'm sure as Kyle could tell us, not always probably, some of the bigger things might be, but I can see it being like the Dolce Vita Players Lounge or the Fitness First Ice Rink. I think that's really unique opportunity too, where we, being really intentional about this, can make sure it fits our community, and that may, include some of those elements. But I think doing this is the first step to knowing that.
I think the interesting advantage you have when you look at city, we've all said it here, but I'll say it again, it's just the city buildings and land is that story to the taxpayer of what the value is. I mean, I look at, like, if I go to a stadium and it has a stadium name, really didn't impact me. Good for that owner who got help that stadium, right? But here you can tell that message like, hey, this was money that wasn't your tax dollars that go, that's the question. Like, the statement was like, well, if you just asked a question like, would you like to have a name for the curling center? People are, well, what if you had a name for the curling center and you didn't, and it got improved and better and you got to still use it, but you didn't affect your taxes to do so. Like, that's a huge advantage in the city stuff that I think is different than your kind of corporate centers or like those types of things, because the average consumer who goes to CHS Fields, for example, isn't necessarily really, I mean, it's a nice field and like the atmosphere, but they didn't, it didn't really save them money per se, versus here you can really point and say, well, this is helping us be financially responsible of taxpayer dollars, which I think is pretty neat.
I think I'm probably the one that struggles the most with this. I'll be very transparent about that. On one hand, like you said, leveraging opportunities to be good stewards of people's tax dollars for, maintaining and upgrading facilities that everyone uses in the community. But I would really like to see the details of some of these agreements that, do end up kind of coming forward in the evaluation, because I struggle with our motto being the best small town. And here we are asking for naming rights and logos and opportunities for bigger companies. And I would love, smaller companies having an opportunity that are local and reside in our community to have those opportunities, but at what price, right?
What's identity? We've talked about that when we first talked about this.
And that was what I was gonna say. Chaska, the name Chaska, our town, our vibe, it's a brand in and of itself. And we lose some of that identity when we give it to somebody else to either go behind it or before it. And I know that, Kyle and his team are going to bring forward a lot of really great information. So I'm on board with doing an evaluation. I was worried cost-wise. I don't want to throw money at something willy-nilly on this, but I struggle because, you see the opportunity with Chaska Community Center. It needs help, right? But at what cost do we do things like this to our community to the point where they feel excluded because it's so out there? So it's like you had mentioned, it's a very delicate balance, but I want to raise the flag of I'm cautiously saying sure, but I'm probably the one person up here that's maybe not fully on board on this. So
it's important for us to hear now because, those are going to be the types of things that we look at because other communities have very similar concerns too as they go forward with this, this branding. And we may come through this and certain facilities may look and say, yeah, it makes a ton of sense for that because we can accomplish this and we don't think we're losing identity with it. And there may be others that's just like, no way, that's just too much a piece of our identity of the community and we just can't. So that's where I think it's really good for us to look holistically at this because I do think that there's going to be different answers for different facilities.
Agreed.
I also think that sometimes you have to be creative. The one thing that, and I was glad Marshall mentioned this, that like the council will be involved with these, we're not just going to name something without represent our constituents and we're their voices. I think that's ever important is that we're talking to them. But I also do think you have to solve problems uniquely sometimes. And we talk about wanting to keep the community center affordable and wanting to have programming that for all. And I think there's unique opportunities to look at it from that perspective and say, this is maybe a way to do that. Keep everyone involved. And that's why I'm glad that, we still have a say. It's not just going to happen. Because I think that's where our voices come in to make sure the community is there. But I also think it's a really unique solution to problems we have.
Yeah, and I think that's where just the details come in, just knowing the details.
Well, and I sort of mentioned it before, but may I'll look at it a different way. We get asked by groups to allow sponsorship quite often. And it really gets to be a struggle about, you sort of get where they're coming from. They're just like, man, there's a opportunity for us to put advertising out here and we can support our association and be able to get, kids uniforms and stuff like that. And the struggle we have when we have those discussions, it's like the community built this facility and how do, if we're going to do something like this, it just doesn't feel right to have one small group of people in the community benefit from an asset that the community invested into. So the thing I sort of like about this too, is it puts some definition to even our discussions that happen with local user groups, so that as we sit down and have those conversations, it's easier for us to be able to say, what does the community view as acceptable and not acceptable?
So when we look at valuation, we look at valuation in terms of like spike or short-term spike demands for like events. So for example, like when there's a next Ryder Cup or PGA at Hazeltine, for example, there's going to be the sudden influx of people that are not from here coming into our community, right? And that may create a temporary spike in demand, right? Like any market, right? You have an influx of consumers. So would we have to say, maybe like a couple of years before that event, then we start looking at it then, because it's more of a temporary thing of like, looking at additional licensing opportunities during that period.
I think you want to look at that separately, because most of the stuff that you see with this end up being longer term relationships. You know, there are people who come in and say, you know, we want to have a 15-year relationship or a 10-year relationship. You know, there are opportunities like that, and we saw it when we did the 19th hole down here in Fireman's Park. Is, you know, there was a good portion of that festivities that happened for the community that were supported by outside groups. And so there is those opportunities, but I think we should look at those separately.
So, but there's inevitably going to be some overlap because you can't extract the fact that we know that the Ryder Cup's going to be here in a few years, and then we know that there's other PGA events and things that happen around here. So that's part of the valuation process that we're going through. But then,
Yeah, because I think the companies who are going to be interested in the longer term relationship, I mean, it's going to be attractive to them to know that there's big events coming into the community, but they don't need to be one-off type things. They can be longer term relationships.
okay.
Now, did I say that correctly?
Go ahead, Kyle.
Yes. We're when we look at whether it's attendance or any of those kind of things that would be affected by a one-off event like that, we try to take an average. As was stated, we're looking at longer term relationships, and some years those things will occur and other years they don't. And that's consistent with the naming rights approach all the way up to, you know, SoFi isn't paying more this year because the Super Bowl's there. That's just kind of a planned event, and they get added value in certain years and less value in other years.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? What's your thoughts?
I make a motion to recommend that we authorize staff to enter a professional service agreement with Superlative Group.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Wong, second by Councilmember Hatfield, to again recommend council enter into a service agreement for facility naming rights. Further discussion? All right, Matt.
All right. Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Long,
Aye.
Grau,
Yes.
Winchell.
Yep. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Forward to
Kyle, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, moves us into item 9, bills.
Wait, we have 8B first, the commissions.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I didn't write 8B. Naming of commission members, appointments, commission appointments. I got to get to my other screen. You probably should have printed those off for us.
You want me to go through each of them and talk about who you guys had talked about, or how do you want me to?
I'm just trying to get to the thing here. So I got it in front of me and I can be reading it as we do it. Give me a sec here. That I had it open already once. Commissioner appointments. All right, I know the first one started off with. So the first item would be, this is how I have it listed here. So we would be appointing Elizabeth Wyveen, Michael Hauer, and Terrence Schwerm to the Park and Recs Commission. So I'd be looking for a motion.
Moved.
Motion. So are you jotting these down then as we do them? So motion by Councilmember Hatfield. Hubbard. Second by
Wong.
Councilmember Wong to appoint again Weinveen, Hauer, and Schwerm to the Park and Recs Commission from February 1st, 22 to December 31st, 24.
Push staggered, I thought.
That's the planning.
Nope, that's planning.
Planning is, okay.
That's down, that'll come up here. Further discussion? Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Grau,
Aye.
Mayor Winchell.
All right, the next one I have up is to appoint Tracy and Ona to the
Got a
human.
yes?
Well, actually, don't forget Sienna White first.
What?
You didn't say yes or no on that last vote?
Oh, I didn't vote? Yes.
I'm trying to get
Yeah.
going. I'm looking ahead here, reading. Sorry. All right, now the next one we have would be appointing Tracy or Ona to the Human Rights Commission, February 1st, 22 to December 31st, 24, with Emily serving as first alternate.
So moved.
Wait, hold on. There was also the student representative too.
Next motion.
Next one.
Okay.
Just, they're all here. So bear with us, but they're all spread out in separate motions. And maybe they could be all one, I don't know. We'll just follow them down here and just get through it. So I think I heard a motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
second by Councilmember McGraw, for again, Tracy and Ona to the Human Rights and Emily as first alternate. Discussion? Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong, Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
Mayor Winchell.
Yes. Right now, it's to put Sienna White to the Human Rights Commission as the student position, February 1st, 22 to December 31st of 22. That's just a one-year term.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard. Discussion. And this is again for Sienna White for Human Rights Commission student position. Matt, we call roll?
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong, Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
Winchell.
Yes. All right, this one is to appoint Carl Lacey to Planning Commission for a term of 1 year, February 1 of 22 to December 31st of 22. And just clarify for people, our Planning Commission kind of got, just due to some people that left or moved or whatever, but resigned from the commission, puts a lot of our dates all together. So we're putting some staggering terms again. These candidates are all aware of the situation. And so that's why we're doing some odd things with the Planning Commission. There'll be the next one will be for a 2-year term, and then the next ones will be for 3-year terms. So it's just to help us keep our staggering so we don't lose all of our members at one point. So, all right. So again, this is Planning Commission, Carl Lacey for 1 year, February 1st to December 31st.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember Grau. Discussion. Matt, we call roll.
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong, Councilmember Grau, Mayor Winchell.
Yes. All right. Next one is to appoint Robert Brass, Planning Commission, February 1st, 22 to December 31st of 23. This is a 2-year term based on what I just talked about.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Grau, second by Councilmember Wong. Discussion. Hearing none. Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong, Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
Mayor Winchell.
Yes. All right. The next one is to appoint Todd, Travis, Cynthia to the Planning Commission for terms February 1st, 22 to December 31st of 24 with Suri
Three.
serving as the first alternate and Carol serving as the second alternate.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong, second by Hatfield?
Yep.
Okay.
Hattie.
Hattie. Again, this is Todd, Travis, Cynthia to the Planning Commission, and then Siri.
Tree.
Tree.
Venkata
Why could I
Rama
think-
Krishna.
I always look at it as Siri.
Three, yeah.
Tree.
and Carol to as the second alternate. Discussion? Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember Grau?
Aye.
Mayor Winchell?
Right, next one I have is, this is to the Heritage Preservation to appoint Christine Coleman. Again, pretty similar situation here about staggering terms. She's just February 1st, 22 to December 31st of 22. And that's for Christine to the Heritage Preservation.
So moved.
Councilmember Grau,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard. And this is Christine to the Heritage Preservation for 1-year term. Discussion. Hearing none. Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember Grau? Mayor Winchell?
All right, and the last one, to appoint Stephen, Greg, Ann, and Tom to the Heritage Preservation for a term of February 1, 22 to December 31st of 24.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hubbard, second by Councilmember Wong. Discussion? Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong? Councilmember Grau?
Aye.
Mayor Winchell?
All right, again, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for stepping up to fill these commissions. These are all very important positions. I think almost everyone got a spot, I think.
I think one did.
I think everyone that applied for position got a position, which is,
A lot of applications.
got a lot of applications. That tells you how many spots are up.
Little commission Tetris.
It was a little bit of commission Tetris.
Yeah, it was a little. All right, so now we are on bills. Anyone?
One question. On page 2, Archer Mechanical, there is a new air handling unit. What was that for?
That was our community center. Our air handling unit went out. That's why we had to shut down a couple weeks ago for 3 days to get a new air handling unit up there.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
And I just want to comment, if anybody's looking at the bills, there's a lot of purchases in there, and that's all part of the Highway 41 project, but those are all reimbursable. I mean,
Yeah, so that basically, what happened last week is we took title to all the properties. And as part of that process, we actually have to deposit with the court the dollars on a certain date. We take title to it at that point. So it all happens at once. But those, we had $5.5 million that the Carver County deposited into our account like December 28th. Which went towards those purchases, as well as other things that are contributing. But we had the cash from that deposit to be able to cover all these transactions.
And I had writer's cramp signing all the documents.
It's a lot.
Every day, I got another signature. So,
I get that e-signature.
yeah,
Probably not on government documents. I don't know why I made that hand motion.
That's the universal sign for government.
It is complicated.
I followed you.
I'll have to remember that.
all right, anyone else got anything on bills? Motion to approve the bills.
Moved. Oh, you got it.
Oh,
I started to say it.
I'm gonna give that one to Councilmember Grau, second by Councilmember Wong. I heard it different.
They
That's all.
duked it
No,
out.
that's how I heard it too.
Oh,
I heard it simultaneously, and you should have followed by saying jinx and then counting the
I
10.
should have what?
I lived with the
I have a motion.
with the 6-year-old.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on bills? Matt?
Councilmember Hatfield? Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong? Councilmember Grau?
Yes.
Mayor Winchell?
Yes. On to other business. Councilmember Hatfield.
Just a few things. I just want to recognize and celebrate Black History Month. This year, they're celebrating health and wellness as a focus for Black History Month. And after this pandemic and kind of we've seen the inequity at times in that, I think that's a good focus. So I've enjoyed learning about feel like every year I learn about more Black history through Black History Month. So just want to recognize that and celebrate our community members of color as well. So I celebrate with them. So that's one thing. And then just 2 events coming up, February 17th, Coffee with a Cop at Duncan at 9 a.m. And then also February 17th at noon is another food distribution at the Old Gedney. So that's all I had.
Councilmember McGraw.
I feel like we've seen a lot of each other, so I don't have much other than I will do what I typically do for my personal side of things. I want to wish my youngest son a happy birthday, which was yesterday, turned 7. He's exhausted today because we had a family party and a friend party all in the same weekend. So, but just happy birthday to Noah, turning 7 years old. And that's all I have.
Right. Councilmember Hubbard.
I'll wish Noah happy birthday as well.
Hey.
Yeah, just a couple things. Bicycle committee, last meeting I had kind of said that when we met virtually, they were kind of up in the air in regards to having an in-person open house. You know, what would that look like? And should we delay? So internally, the management team decided that what they were going to do was forego an in-person open house. They're going to take the document now, the draft of the master plan, and put it on the city website and open it up for public comment and for 30 days. But in addition to that, the Antonio, who's our management, the firm, I'm losing my train of thought on the name. What's his title? Consultant. Thank you. I was like, what is that called? He's going to make some short videos, like explanation videos. It's going to be very informative. And then also some of the steering committee members will make videos as well. So it's a little bit of an interactive virtual experience for folks. And then as well, they're going to be making posters that will be on display, like at the community center or maybe down here or something along those lines. So a little bit more of a kind of a robust community engagement, kind of done safely. So that's where things sit with that. And then I am one of Julie's in the room. So I'm one of the Citizen Police Academy attendees in training here. So learning all about the Chaska Police Department. There's been a couple sessions. Looking forward to maybe using the pepper ball gun. I don't know.
I think if you use it, don't you have to
Bring it here.
experience it though first? Isn't that the rule?
Oh, then no, then I'm not.
It's sort of like the taser.
Isn't that the rule? So you have to know what it feels like, so then you are.
I'll sit back and be an observer of things like that. No, it's been a great experience so far. It's wonderful to see so many engaged citizens and just really informative and just seeing kind of the pride that our Chaska PD has for their job. So and then
You're in that.
there's like 20, right? About.
Cool.
Yeah.
Not a big group?
That's what we usually have.
Oh,
So, yeah. Great. And then the Fireman's fishing contest was this last weekend. Was a smashing success. Big winners all around. I was out there. It was cold, but wonderful. So just like to thank them for all of their hard work, kind of bringing the community together. It looked like a lot of people having a lot of fun out there and inside. So it was just nice to see this place filled with people again. So, and then just last but not least, just I know that he's officially retired, but I wanted to congratulate Tim Wiebe, our outgoing fire chief, on his many years of service and dedication to our community. I honestly, I'm so humbled at the bravery and just dedication that you know, our public safety has for the community, especially the firefighters, you know, it just takes a certain individual to be able to run into a situation like that when other people are wanting to run out. So really want to thank him for all the hard work and wish him lots of success and you know, I don't know, relaxation down the road. So, and that's all I have.
I texted him on Saturday morning and asked him what he was doing his first day of retirement. He said he was driving to South Dakota ice fishing.
I texted him today and asked him, how's day one? He goes, South Dakota fishing, all smiles.
I'll just piggyback on it. The comment that stuck with me at his little celebration thing was his thought about, and I think like this is a good advice for really all of us, is that being there and helping people on their worst days. You know, that was, I probably paraphrased that pretty closely to what he said, but you just think about that, and it to your point, it really does take a special person to be there for someone really when their nature of what's going on is probably one of their worst days they've ever had.
And I should also mention just his wife Kelly, you know, that supporting you know, role and the dedication there too, because that's, you know, a lot of hours and time spent as well, working hard.
Mentioned on Friday that I hadn't thought about before is, you know, with Kelly's dad being the chief of the fire department, I mean, her entire life has been spent with the Chaska Fire Department, so she's actually had twice as many years of service with the fire department.
You know, wake up thinking she's hearing the pager, and it will just be silence.
Phantom pagers, yeah. That's it for me.
Okay, sure.
Let's see. So first is congratulations to also the Chaska Hawks dance team. They placed third in sections, which is their 15th consecutive trip to the state kick meet, which is pretty impressive.
That'll put them to state.
Yep. And there's also the 25th and the 25th time that they've gone in program history, which is pretty big deal. So
Strong team.
yeah, so it's really strong, and that says not just like as a one-shot deal, but there's like a tradition of excellence at Chaska. So, you know, kudos to the girls, and certainly, you know, it's you know, congratulations, and hopefully they do well at state. Also, if I'm mistaken, that there's Downtown Business Alliance is also doing an ice gardens on February 18th to 21st. Yep. So, which will be really, really exciting. So looking forward to that.
I had that here, but I didn't know. I was going to ask when.
So looking forward to seeing that, and looking forward to that because I think that will be before our next meeting, right? Because we're in the 21st. Yes. So 28th, right. Because 21st would be the next meeting with the normal meeting. It's a holiday. And then only other thing is that I also want to offer congratulations to the chief on his retirement as well. One of the things that I think really stood out to me is that, you know, leadership is a very difficult thing to measure sometimes. And one of the things that he said to me, which I really took to heart, is that, you know, I mentioned to him when we were chatting that, you know, sometimes it must be really hard to go into those burning buildings. He said, it's not hard to go into a burning building. It's really hard to send someone else into the building. And I think that's a real testament to the fact that how much he cares about his team and his crew and understands the risk involved. I think it's to put yourself to know how difficult it is to send somebody else. That's something that's really tough. I think that, you know, whether you're on the front line of the fire department, the police, and the military, those are places where those leaders have to face those tough decisions on a day-to-day basis. And I'd say that's something I very much appreciate because it's not easy to do. I know, you know, Mayor, that you've had to do that too. And certainly thank you for all your service there. It's that's something that is something that, you know, I certainly value tremendously, and that's something that that in a community you need people like that to be in those positions, because that's what helps define the community and the way the community responds to incredible challenges and the greatest of adversity.
We're very fortunate here, all of our emergency services folks, that what John was talking about is, you know, most people that they see are probably having the worst day of their life, and it's about showing care and compassion. And that's the part that really makes a difference. And you'll hear that from many people that have been served by our folks here, how caring and compassionate they were, because they are most likely having the worst day of their life. So we're fortunate. That's it.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Okay, Matt?
I too want to thank Tim for everything. I was one of those people that was having the worst day of his life when him and DJ Krause came and saved my son from what could have been very tragic situation. So, you know, the amount of respect I have for those guys and what they do that on a very regular basis, and to be able to see that and how professionally they handled themselves, it's pretty special. So I'm definitely going to miss Tim. He was a great leader within our organization, somebody I really looked up to as a leader. So congratulations to him. I'm glad he's off and being able to retire. One thing I thought I had shared with you guys, but the mayor reminded me that maybe I didn't. I did finish the assistant city administrator position and did offer the position to Elise Durbin from the Carver County CDA. And you've actually had the chance to see her a couple times over the last couple meetings as she was presenting for the Ernst House project that's down there. Elise spent about almost 3 years over at Carver County CDA and as the EDA director, and did just a great job. We had a lot of opportunity to work with her over there and just get to see what type of real talent she was, but also worked for the city of Minnetonka for 15 years. And then Hennepin County for 3 years on a lot of different projects that got her involved in the community. So this truly was the best applicant pool of any position I've had in the last probably decade. And we had 3 fantastic finalists with it and stuff. So I was really happy about that. And she'll be starting on February 28th. So at the end of the month. So her first day will be our next council meeting. So you have to give her a ton of grief. You have to make sure that
You're just gonna pack the agenda?
she's like calling roll. You have to say, that's not my name. Or yeah. But I'm really excited to have her come on board. I think she's going to do a fantastic job. And one of the added advantages she has is sort of the core team that she's worked with in City Hall are going to be the core team she's working with now. So has had really good experiences working with her and stuff. So she'll be I think a real good instant addition to the team. And then with the fire chief position, the advertisement is out. We did go through a process with the entire fire department. Geez, I think it was about three weeks ago now, to have them get together with Richard and Irina Fersman to sort of go. We do this with every one of our departments when we go through a department head process, is to sit down and really talk about what are sort of the keys of the future for the department. What are sort of the key leadership traits that that from their perspective they think is really important for the next leader that we look at, and we really use that process to help in defining the final job description as we go through the process of evaluating candidates, to use those as the things that we evaluate those candidates off of, because we try to use a real inclusive process where we have different teams of people. So we have like an employee team, a department head team, an administration team, all come back together sort of at the end, so that there's a real inclusivity as far as them providing feedback to me about what are the things that they saw in the candidates and having that criteria there. So we got that finished up a couple weeks ago. We have the job advertisement out now. I believe that closes at the end of the month. So we'll be doing interviews probably mid-March for that position, which I would anticipate that you'd see somebody by about the end of April, beginning of May again. So looking forward to that process. And then the electric director position, we finish up our last final interview tomorrow. So I suspect by Wednesday or Thursday, I'll be in a position where I can make an offer on that and have 2 fantastic finalists for that. So I'm really excited about that too. So And then the only other thing I was going to mention, I think this is something that Councilmember Hubbard is a part of, is we're sort of been exploring how to more formalize and institutionalize the Chaska Cares program so that we continue this sort of beyond COVID and sort of make it part of the fabric of who we are going forward. And one of the opportunities that's popped up is a program that I believe it's through Carver County Public Health that's called Communities of Belonging. And using some of the resources and funding and staffing expertise that they have to help sort of provide some background support behind our Chaska Cares effort, and then look at how we use that to help institutionalize it within our organization. Because that's the one thing that I consistently hear from people coming out of COVID is the thing that really distinguished, I think, us as a community was the fact that we really focused on sort of these outreach community outreach type of things. And we don't want to just do that in an emergency. We want that to become sort of the part of the fabric of what we do into the future. So I think tomorrow you guys are having a phone call
No, I think it's Wednesday.
having a phone
Yeah,
call.
another Zoom meeting.
But that's going to be something you're going to hear more coming from us as far as ideas about how we sort of move this into the future. But this is a start and in a way we can bring sort of some existing resources in to help us sort of bolster that.
Yeah, I'm excited for, taking what you guys as a city staff and maybe some other community member partnerships and kind of making it, bigger and bringing in, more help to kind of broaden the view. There's a lot of great opportunities that I think will come forward from it. And I like the longevity piece of it as well. And I think as, the city is resuming its normal services, is kind of like, a lot of our parks and rec staff were involved with Chaska Cares and things. It really kind of takes a lot of that pressure off their plates, and puts it as more of a group whole by bringing some other people kind of into the fold. So
it was a lot easier when nobody had any other job to do.
Yeah, it's like I really want to do this, but do I have time to do it? And then they don't really have to ask that question because there's some other people that kind of want to help lift that message. So
that's it.
Jake? No report? Kevin? Good. Julie?
I'm good.
She just wants to go home. All right, just a few things. You kind of heard Matt talking about, really, I don't know if you really start putting it all together when you think about all of the key positions we've been going through hiring here, just are still in the process of in the last month, when you think about electrical director and assistant city administrator. And really before that, we hired a new economic development director. No,
community
development
director. So all these positions, some are internal, sort of switching spots, but it's a lot that we're going through, and that's very time consuming, and the amount of things that we have going on in the development growth around here really just adds that extra burden. But it's obviously very important that we get the right people in the right seats in these positions, and it sounds like so far we've been very fortunate. We've had strong candidates, and it's not that we have to really think of which one's the best one that's going to fit, because they all bring different qualities. So we're fortunate that way, because it's maybe not always that case. So
I will say it. I think I mentioned this before. We went through the electric director process the first time, and it's so important to get the right person. I will not come out of a process and hire the wrong person. And so we ended up having to do the process over again, and we sort of took a different approach towards recruiting and ended up with a much better slate of candidates this time. So you have to do it over.
Well, you're far better off to do it over than to do it wrong. Speaking of that, something I missed because it got sent to my personal email and I kept forgetting, but Bob Ripkey resigning from Southwest Transit Commission. I don't think we've really formally thanked him for all of his years. He's been involved with Southwest, and obviously now after last work session, he's not leaving yet. He's still but he won't be a city representative this time. But I just want to thank him for his time as being our city rep
when that was the model that was in place. And that model has since changed, that we're going to two elected officials on that commission now. But I just wanted to thank Bob that never really did that, because I didn't find it when it first came out until later when I found it in my personal email. So
I did think it was humorous when the commission reminded Bob that he now represents, at large, all the cities and not just Chaska. I thought that was humorous and a good nod to how he's represented Chaska so far.
And then another thing that I forgot from a previous meeting was Bosco Bernardi passed away on January 19th. Bosco was bought a lot of the open land when the Jonathan Corporation filed bankruptcy, and he helped get a lot of new neighborhoods established and redeveloped and things like that. So Bosco was a big part in getting the northern part of Chaska really where it's starting to take off the way it is now. So, but he was like 97 years old. I didn't realize he was that old of a gentleman at that point. I
only retired
yeah, I was going to say
Oh,
it wasn't. I would have never thought that he was.
last time he came in for a meeting was just before COVID. So
And some of you remember we did work with Wallingford Properties. That's the same company. So Mike Benson, who is his son-in-law, I think is now kind of, and then did you say Bosco's son is involved in that too or not?
No, so Vasco's son-in-law, Mike, is the president of it. There was, Vasco also had a brother, Tony, who owned all the Chaska Commons area. So he did a lot of developing too. He was older than Vasco, and he passed away probably about 3 years ago, I'd say. And so his son, Luigi, took over that company. So we have sort of the next generation of people that are in there. But if you're ever wondering how some of the weird first names or weird names of city streets came to be, those were always like kids and grandkids. And
Can you give me like one example off the top of your head?
Manuela.
Okay.
I think that was one.
Yeah, over by you. I have
It's my street, actually.
What's your street?
Actually,
I think Heather Ridge, I think Heather was one of his grandkids or something. And so, Tuscany Hills, he was from Italy. And so he really wanted to sort of create an Italian mark in Chaska. So Tuscany Hills he was from Tuscany.
I always wondered,
It was a sort of a nod to his home country and stuff. So Vasco is a fantastic person. He was one of those guys that did exactly what he said he was going to do. He was not easy to negotiate with, but whatever you got done with him, not that we didn't put it in writing, but you wouldn't have had to, because Vasco did what he said he was going to do. So you always appreciate those types of things. He was a very, very much a person that had a lot of integrity.
Right, I too, to the Weeby family and Tim and Kelly, that they've certainly left a mark on and I talked briefly about this, but I didn't really elaborate. Tim was just kind of one of those guys that was a born leader. He stepped into positions of leadership early on, and he just amazed you the things he did, and he just kept moving up those from step to step to step, and public works director and fire chief of the volunteers and fire chief full-time. So he's quite a leader and quite a person, and he definitely will be missed in our things here around the city, without a doubt. The thing that I think was that one of his biggest accomplishments was leading us through the pandemic. I mean, he took that role and he made some decisions that weren't very popular across the city even, but he went with them, and then generally about a month or two later, everybody goes, I see why he did that. But he was just always out in the forefront, and we'll be so lucky to get someone that has that talent as we move into the next phase of the fire department. So, and hopefully we have those strong candidates. The CFD, the fishing contest yesterday, congrats. It was a great turnout. They sold 1,500 of those tickets. And we talked about Jim Worm, who was Kelly's father. Jim sold most of those tickets all the years. And Jim passed away and everybody was worried about, are we going to be able to sell those tickets? And they sold all 1,500 tickets. So.
But you know that I officially bought my ticket from Jim Worm this year.
What?
I officially bought my ticket from Jim Worm this year, and I said that every year, whatever ticket I buy is going to go to a credit towards Jim Worm. Because he always used to catch me, and it wasn't even a question. It's like, here's your ticket, Matt.
Kind of similar to you and the 100 Club.
It's sort of.
Not all far from the tree.
Yeah.
So anyways, congrats to those guys and for all their work. So, and I had the ice sculptures, so they are coming. So that was exciting. That really drew a large crowd here, and hopefully, yeah, and hopefully the weather is good, and hopefully I hope we don't have the vandals like we did last year. They destroyed some of them early, so.
We can all take shifts.
Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah, the 5 of us, we'll take shifts.
All right. I mean,
40 degrees.
You know, if they do a Sonic the Hedgehog one, I'll volunteer to take a shift because my son would just love to see that as an ice sculpture in the park.
I don't know who they determine who they do. I don't know.
They had one that you could you could put a shout out, and I definitely threw that out there as an option, but.
Person over there, she's got the end.
I actually don't think I know which ones they're doing.
All right.
Jen does such a great job. She just really runs with that sort of stuff. So.
All right, last thing, this is our last month of our crazy meeting schedule. So we met tonight, the 7th, and now we're off till the 28th, and we'll come back on the 28th because our third one is President's Day. So we'll be back on the 28th, and then we'd be right back again right away again in March. So we'll be back to back there. So that's all I have. Last call. Turn.
Moved.
Oop.
We'll sit over.
I didn't even hear them. Did they both go?
Wong,
Maybe it was just, yeah.
Just me.
Councilman Wong.
I thought it was just him.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just-
I thought I heard two.
I'll say it. So I got a motion by Councilmember Wong, second by
Second by me.
Councilmember Hatfield to adjourn. Pat.
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard, Councilmember Wong, Councilmember McGraw, Mayor Winchell.
Yes, we'll see you in 3 weeks.